Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to introduce our SGS webinar, Master the Airport Carbon Accreditation, or ACA program. Today's webinar will cover a short overview of SGS, North American greenhouse gas drivers, an overview and history of the program, the 6 levels of ACA, common pitfalls and tips for success, next steps, and Q&A. Please feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A box throughout the presentation. We will also be sharing a link to the on-demand version of the presentation, as well as a copy of the slide deck after the presentation is complete. My name is Kim LaFrancois, and I'm the Regional Sales Manager for the Industrial Sector here at SGS. I've been in the testing, inspection, and certification industry for nearly 10 years, working with many different clients throughout various industries. The other speakers joining us today are Adam Hammis and Ursula Antunes de Mayolo. Adam is the ESG Director here at SGS and has 20 years experience as corporate ESG sustainability consultant, author, and instructor. Adam has founded multiple organizations and has an MBA with international education and leadership experience, integrating ESG, CSR, and sustainability into corporate strategy. He has also taken many different courses to become a competent and effective resource for ESG and sustainability. Ursula is the Senior Product Manager and Lead Auditor for Greenhouse Gas and has 18 years of experience as a lead auditor of countless industry standards around the world. She is a greenhouse gas lead verifier for ISO 14064-1, ISO 14067, and CDP, an approved ACA verifier for levels 4+, has verified over 60 airports worldwide in the ACA program, and has an MS degree of engineering in environmental science and technology. We're in great hands for our presentation today. I'll now pass it over to Adam so we can dive right in.
Thank you, Kim. And thank you to everyone for coming out for our webinar. I know you're very busy. If you haven't heard of SGS, we are a 140-plus-year-old business that started in Switzerland. We have been around the globe for a very long time. Most people know us in the TIC industry, testing, inspection, and certification, but we are the world's leading TIC company around the world and the global benchmark for quality and integrity. We have boots on the ground, auditors, testing facilities, inspection sites, and if you need anything, there's a good chance that we can help you with it. So if you have not heard of us, sustainability is maybe not the first thing people think, but if you look at our history, we have not only embedded sustainability from the top of the board level to the CEO down to every employee through training and expertise, but we're often sitting at the table when a lot of these standards are written as part of the working group or testing, because we do become a verifier for almost all of these global standards. So we are deeply integrated into ESG and sustainability, including greenhouse gas. And not only that, we get tested by rating agencies and all the powers that be, frameworks and standards, so that we can show our clients that we know exactly what they're going through, and we get rated very highly in all of our internal processes, along with being an amazing resource for our clients. So let's jump right in. And we won't spend a lot of time on this, but it's good to get the broader sense of not just airports, that greenhouse gas is the big driver across. If you look at all of global regulations, all standards and frameworks, one leading issue within the broader umbrella of sustainability and ESG is consistently greenhouse gas and climate change. Those ESG ratings are still the biggest driver in North America because we have, people might be surprised, but we lack regulation if you compare us to Europe and South America and East Asia. So really the larger publicly traded companies that are getting rated for the investors are the big drivers and have the most teeth. But then supply chain customers, which means the bigger brands that are using tools like EcoVadis and CDP, they're actually pushing those mandates and requests and questionnaires down into their supply chain. And it's kind of the second wave of sustainability, where small privately held companies that are in supply chains are now also reporting on this information. As regulation comes in, third, CSRD, if you're an international company, you've got multiple airports, you might be familiar with European regulation, but Canada, California, and the SEC DC proposed states, they're all regulations or proposed regulations specifically and only on greenhouse gas disclosures. And a distant fourth and fifth are consumer pressure, what's called the lifestyles of health and sustainability market, which is a huge global market and growing, but individuals who are willing to pay more for sustainable products and services, and then talent, employees who want to work for companies that they align with their values and they believe they're a sustainable company. So what does that lead us to? Here on airports, we're actually going to be driven by some very, very specific things, and that's the ACA program, which has been for a while the main driver, and it's customized for the industry. And recently, which we'll talk again, we'll touch on at the end, but there is new guidance from ACI called the Environmental, Social, and Governance Management Best Practices, first edition. And so those are just highly customized and specific for your industry and working with airports. And so despite the larger ecosystem, you have some very direct and specific guidance, which is incredibly helpful. Some industries are jealous of that. And so it brings us to our first polling question, just to get a sense of who's here and where you're at in the process. What is your number one driver of your airport's interest in greenhouse gas reporting? Do you have any ratings that you've gotten pressure from? Do you have supply chain customers, regulatory bodies, consumers, talent, or other? And do you feel like one of these stands out to you? And I'll give you a moment to think about it. Obviously, you're in a very unique situation. You're managed often by municipalities or regional bodies of government. But do you see any larger pressures? Or if you hit F and other, go ahead and write that in the chat box or the Q&A, just so we can get a flavor for what those other drivers are in your world. And maybe you don't know, and you can take your best guess. But you're here for a reason on this webinar, and please let us know what it is. Give everybody about 15 more seconds. Well, we're not an airport, but SGS, we have sort of all of the above. We're a large publicly traded company, global. We have investor ratings, supply chain customers, client pressure. We're kind of ahead of regulation, so that's not as applicable to us, but I think talent, everyone on this call, myself and Ursula included, and Kim care a lot about sustainability and greenhouse gas as well. So 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so we've got a little bit on the ratings, no supply chain, obviously airports, that's a good one that probably isn't going to show up, but regulation, consumers, and other. If you want to type in, we've got Jamie wrote investor interest, public perception, and a corporate commitment to sustainability. So you could just say our organizational values, we believe in it, we're passionate about the issue, things like that. It's absolutely true in a lot of cases as well. So briefly, before I hand it off to the expert on the call, Ursula, I'm just going to give you a brief history of what is the ACA program, why does it exist. So it is the Airport Carbon Accreditation Program, or ACA. It's the only institutionally endorsed global carbon management certification program customized specifically for airports. Airlines have their own program, Corsia, if you're familiar with it. Independently, it assesses efforts to manage and reduce carbon emissions. There's a free calculator and a common framework for airports. And there are 6 levels of certification, which are measurable goalposts to evolve through over time, not to be confused with the numbering system, where it actually only goes up to 4+, because there's we'll show you in a second. So when they say 6 levels, you won't actually see a 6, you'll just see a 4+. And the history, back in 2009, there was the 19th ACI European Annual Conference, and over 30 airports at that conference committed to managing carbon. So that was, almost 2 decades ago. 2 years later, they already had 43 airports in 18 different countries, and they extended from Europe to Asia Pacific. 2 more years later, they accounted for 22% of all global air passenger travel. So it was really starting to take hold. And then they extended to the African region. 2 more years, they had 111 airports, and then 50 European airports for the first time committed to being carbon neutral by 2030. And that was, just so you know, as we go through the steps and the different levels, that was kind of the most progressive, because you can start out just measuring, but as you go higher, then you get to carbon neutral. And then 2 more years, we had up to 200 airports. And then today we have 548 airports. Honestly, It does change every day. Sometimes there could be a new one, but the last we checked was 548, with 116 of them achieving a carbon neutral claim worldwide. And so it's not only young, but it's grown quickly, and I think it speaks well to the value of the program that they customize it specifically for airports, and it works very well. And this gives you a sense of the North American market only, just where we're at, because that's where my team focuses on. To show you the split, they're graphed on the right-hand side with the little color codes, but 72 airports total with 54.2% of passenger traffic. The majority are in mapping stage, and then reduction, optimization, you can see neutrality, transformation, and transition are dwindling, but they're growing because you evolve into those. And so those are the real leadership companies in the larger airports, and my hat is off to them. Congratulations, and thank you for leading the way. And then as you see on this map, we're going to go into what does this all mean, what are the 6 levels, and how do you go through the program. So is your airport participating in the ACA program today? Yes, we've received an accreditation, and we're here, you're here to learn more. Not yet, but you've started the process, you're intending to. No, and I'm guessing you're at this webinar, so you're still considering it, but haven't started the process, and just, you don't know. You probably know if you've come to the webinar because you're probably the person. But take a look, let us know where you're at. It's just nice to know who's in the room, and we can kind of dictate our answers and some of the stories that we tell and later to make sure we cover different bases of where you're at in your maturity level. Give it about 5 more seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to show the results. So a lot of you are already accredited. That's great. So it probably means you're interested in maintaining, but probably moving up to the next level. Got some who have started. So my hat is off to you as well. Good luck. And if we can help, obviously would like to. No. But if you're interested, and I don't know, that's absolutely a fine place to be. You're not alone, just so you know. So let's hand it over to Ursula Antunes de Mayolo, who, as everyone said, she has a wealth of knowledge, not only 18 years with SGS, but she's been doing greenhouse gas for a very long time and is only one of 2 approved, verified level 4+, and has done 60+ airports. So Ursula, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much, Adam. Good afternoon for everybody, and also good night for the ones that are joining from Africa and from the Middle East. Thank you for attending today. So I'm going to explain the 6 levels of accreditation, and also I will give you some general comments, feedback that I can give you of all the airports that I have been auditing through all these years. So something important when you select your boundaries is to understand your airport group. No, if you are just one airport, then you are in an individual certification. No, so then you are a standalone airport, and in the case that you have several airports belonging to the same group, then maybe you can apply to the group certification. This is very important because in some countries, there's a company that owns several airports, and maybe they better apply through a group certification, as this will reduce the resources, time spent for you to put the application. Plus, also, it will be cheaper at the end of the day because you only have to apply for one group accreditation. So what are the requirements to have a group certification? You have to be an operator with multiple airports, and all those airports have to be included in the same application. So they have to undergo the verification, let's say, at the same time, more or less, at the same time frame. Each of the airports that belong to the group must be below 500,000 pax per year, and all the airports shall move together. So all shall be at the same level of accreditation. So in your group, all will be level 1 or all will be level 2. You cannot have some that are in level 1 and some that are in level 2. They all have to be in the same level. What is the advantage? That you can make some sampling for the site visits. Also, you will reduce the time, and especially the time that you put in inputting the information at the database, because it will be only one application for the whole group. Also, you will have only one carbon management plan for the group. So at the end, it makes an advantage decision to have a group certification. Something that I wanted to comment also as feedback is that several times the airport group have one big airport and several little airports. So in that case, the advice is that the big airport gets their own individual certification and the rest of airports go into the group certification. Yeah, because you cannot put together the big airport with the small airports. The big airport has to have their own separate application. So we have group certifications, and that's very practical, so think about it. Independent of the group certification, there's also a model within the Airport Carbon Accreditation that it's there in the manual. It's not very obvious, but it exists. That is an airport operator that has several airports, maybe big, no problem. And if they are all undergoing an audit at more or less the same time frame, not all need to be visited, because you can do a sampling to cover at least 50% of the emissions. We have to ask permission to the Airport Carbon Accreditation, but we have had several clients that do it, and we have already verified them, and they are already certified. So that's a possibility. We discuss if you are in that situation, and then together we prepare the question to the Airport Carbon Accreditation, and if they approve, then it could be a sampling for the site visit, which of course, again, is a reduction for cost and for time for you. Okay, so if you have any question about this part of the group and individual, you can put at the end of the session. We're going to have some questions and answers, but this is the part that I covered, the part of individual and group certification. So what are the levels of accreditation? As Adam was saying, there are 6 levels. The first one is mapping, which basically is to determine your carbon footprint of scope 1 and 2. So that means your direct emissions, the fuels you use at the site, the refrigerant, if you have an incinerator. So all those are scope 1 emissions, and scope 2 emissions will be majority of the times just the electricity that you use for your operation. So with that, you have the mapping level, which is level 1. Then the second level is reduction. So in addition to calculating your carbon footprint of scope 1 and 2, also you have to prepare and demonstrate that you have reduced your carbon footprint. We're going to go into the detail of each of them. The next level is optimization. So optimization, level 3, is when you also engage with your stakeholders. That's why you need to prepare something called the stakeholder engagement plan. So in this situation, you need to quantify scope 3, because those are the entities that emit the greenhouse gases that are third party. That's why it's a third party engagement plan or a stakeholder engagement plan. Then you have the next level, the 4th level, which is 3+. So in the 3+ level is the same as optimization. The only difference is that for your scope 1 emissions and for your scope 2 emissions, plus the business travel, you have to purchase carbon credits. So then you are neutral. So what you neutralize is scope 1 and 2, and of 3, only the business travel. You don't need to, if you do more, of course, great, no? But at least you need to do the business travel. The next level is transformation. So transformation is a new level. As Adam was saying, also, we are, at least until the last time we saw, we were only 2 persons in US that can do the level 4 and 4+, because for being a level 4+ verifier, you have to have several years of experience, plus also have new training requirements and other requirements. So in the transformations, the additional part is that you have to set targets that are aligned to the scenarios of the Paris Agreement. I will explain further, but it is with regards to targets, no, and how you measure your performance towards those targets. And in transition, it's the same as for, but buying carbon credits. So the ones that have the plus really is when you neutralize your emissions. So in transition, again, the only thing that you need to neutralize is scope 1, 2, and business travel. Okay, so going into the detail of the level 1. So in this part, you have to calculate your carbon emissions. Airport Carbon Accreditation have prepared a tool called ACERT calculator. So with that, to tell you the truth, it's very easy to calculate because it's specific for airports. So you input there your information of fuel usage, electricity usage. You also input your refrigerant recharges. So, and then it calculates alone. So it is very practical to use the ACER calculator. Of course, it's not perfect, but it is very good. And it is the tool that the airports provide. So if you didn't calculate your carbon footprint, you can use the ACER calculator. Why I say it's not perfect? Because if you do your own Excel, maybe you can have the exact emission factor for your location, for your type of fuel with more precision. But being a global tool, is good enough for calculating the carbon footprint of your airport. But we have several airports that have consultants, and the consultants also build more personalized calculators, no, that track better the reductions and majority of times these tools are more precise, but the ACER tool is very good. So if you didn't calculate, you can use it's free, the ACER calculator, and once you register in the program, Airport Carbon Accreditation can give you this calculator. So what are common challenges in level 1? Sometimes the airports omit emission sources. So when we go to the site, we are walking and then suddenly we see a wastewater treatment plant. So they didn't consider that before, but we tell them, hey, this is an emission source that was not considered, or we see incinerator. So that's why it's so important to make the site visit, because through the site visit, we go to all the parts of the airport. We see if they have incinerator, if they have a sterilization area for international waste, if they have wastewater treatment plants, septic tanks, if we also can see the electricity meters, the gas meters. Sometimes in airports, we see that they have propane, but then we investigate, is this propane purchased by the airport, purchased by third parties? So that visit is essential to also confirm the boundaries, because the things that are, for example, purchased directly by the third party for the restaurants, no, natural gas for the restaurants purchased directly by them, then that's a scope 3 emission. But if it is a natural gas for the heating of the airport purchased by the airport operator, then that's a scope 1 emission. So it's very good to do the site visit. So I mentioned because on the past, we always did site visit. Then we had the COVID, we didn't make site visit. And now some airports think that it's not needed, the site visit, but it is not only needed in the program, but it's also very good to have that site visit to understand the boundaries, to confirm, and also to improve the rapport with the verifier. The client feel more comfortable with what they are writing in their application, because finally they input the information in the application and that goes directly to Airport Carbon Accreditation. So it's better if that was already checked before. So, so the omission of emission sources is very, very common, especially the first audit. The second, third audit is the same emissions. Maybe they have new machinery, or maybe also what happens is that something that was third party done, now is done by the operator or the other way around. So there could be some changes through the time. No? So that's why in the following years is mostly to assess the changes between the first audit and the next audits. Another common challenge is that the first year they don't have a policy. They didn't know that they have to make a policy, but the airport has to make a policy for reduction of greenhouse gases, reduction of energy. So airports define their own policy, but it has to have somewhere a commitment to reduce energy or to reduce greenhouse gases, and also be signed by the highest level of the airport. I have situations that, for example, one client that I have that is a airport operator that has several airports in Mexico, but then they had another airport in the Caribe. So the one that was signing the policy was the one of the company group of Mexico, but really didn't include the company of the Caribe because it was another company name. So I told them, yeah, it's good, but better, it will be a better evidence to have that the policy is ratified by the highest level in the Caribe as well. No? So that could happen as well, especially if you go to, if your airport has, airport group has airports in islands or in another country, you need to see if the person signing also has the authority on the other country. There could be also calculation errors. So errors that may be emission factor of electricity, no? Because there's a part that you can personalize. For example, in the asset calculator, you can put your own factor. But also I had one that in the Caribbean as well, that they put average of South America. And the average of South America is very low because the emission factor is really low here. But in the Caribbean, it is very high, so it was not applicable, no? So that could be a calculation error. Or in US, also another thing that can happen is where are you located? You have to, in the first part in the asset, you also put the location of your airport. So you have to put the state that you are, so then it will pull automatically the emission factor there. So in US, there could be that, and also in Canada, because it depends where you are, the emission factors that it will pull. That is especially for the electricity, because the others that are fuel is more the same for the whole world. But in the case of electricity, it makes a dramatic difference because electricity is such a high emission in the scope 1 and 2 part that you need to have it right. So at the verification, we confirm this emission factor, and we confirm for all the levels as well, if you are using location-based or market-based, so also we confirm the number that is used for the market-based, no? So when you purchase renewable energy, we have also to verify all that part. So what are tips for success in level 1? So check who are responsible for each thing, no? Not only the policy, but also there's a whole chapter in the ACA application, in the Airport Carbon Accreditation, that you have to put your responsibilities, your different areas, if this is responsibility of maintenance or responsibility of human resources for the training, or who's responsible for each of the parts, no? And for each of the emission sources, no? If it is usually maintenance department, operations, fleet also could be another, no? Procurement. So who's responsible to gather the data and to process the information? And use a free asset calculator, and if you want, you can also get a consultant to build your own calculator, no? Or to help you to fill your asset calculator. But the asset calculator is quite good tool. It's not compulsory asset calculator. You do it if you want, but it is very, very common that at least the airport confirms their data with the asset calculator. Okay,
Ursula,
so, yes?
Really quick, we've got 2 questions that came in. One from Ahmed says the 6 levels are for airports, or can they be applied to any other industries?
The 6 levels are for airports, but what I'm explaining is applicable for all industries. It's just that you will not receive a certificate from the Airport Carbon Accreditation, says level 1, 2, 3. But actually, this is very close to what I will explain now about the GHG protocol. And what was the other question?
The second one is an airport that builds for a period of time for expansion. Do emissions also have to be added for ACA certification at level 3+?
At level 4 is that construction emissions need to be added. So you are, it depends. I don't know if the question is about activity, they need to be included in level 4 because in the previous levels, it's optional to include the construction emissions. But once that new terminal, let's say, is given to you, then it is part of your operation. So once you receive it, then you have to turn on the light. So in that part, then you have to add it into your system. But then there is, in the Airport Carbon Accreditation, there's some, let's say, options that if you increase your emissions, there's something that is called reduction with limited deviation, no? So that means that you have to explain why it increased your emissions. You say, because I have a new terminal now. So then we have to make a verification of that calculation by square meter, no? Or by persons. We see, but we have to, once you receive that to operate it, it is part of your airport.
Mm-hmm. And there one more came in, and I think Ahmed might have to clarify. It says, is there a procedure for assessing the carbon footprint? I assume he means verifying the carbon footprint. In our language, it would be probably verifying. Do you want to talk about the verification?
Yes, verification, let's say, is synonym of audit, synonym of certification. For the purpose of this webinar and the greenhouse gases, more or less is the same to say certification of the airport or verification of the airport or auditing the airport. So, for example, what we do is that, no? So we audit for providing a verification statement. And then when we provide a verification statement, the Airport Carbon Accreditation gives you a certificate. So at the end, it's the same thing. It's just that depends on the deliverable. Because Airport Carbon Accreditation gives you a certificate, then it's a certification. Because we provide a verification statement, is called verification. No? So, and this is connected to the first question that you provided. So what we do is when the airport prepares a carbon footprint, let's say the total is 2,000. So then the footprint is 2,000, the input into the database of Airport Carbon Accreditation, and then if we verify, we say, okay, and then the Airport Carbon Accreditation approves and gives a certificate to you that says you are level 1. But nothing else. It's just say you are level 1, good, but then you don't know, for the public, you don't have a greenhouse gas certificate to say what is your footprint, which were your boundaries, which is the year of the period that was included there. So that's why, for example, in SGS, when we make an Airport Carbon Accreditation, also we give a greenhouse gas verification statement. So in North America, the most common standard, and it's also what the Airport Carbon Accreditation uses as basis, is the GHG protocol. So here we prepare an example of GHG protocol certificate that we provide in addition to the Airport Carbon Accreditation. So it is automatically, let's say, because it is let's say the response, no, your response, but as a verification statement, and that will be useful for any program that you present, not only for ACA. It is for everything, because this is the most famous thing, the greenhouse gas verification statement. Independent if you are an airport or not, this is the same that we provide for a oil and gas site, for a mine, for a factory, is the same. So the verification statements describe details of the carbon footprint. If you have any reduction, for example, you say, we installed solar panels and with this we avoided 3,000 ton emissions, okay? So in the verification statement, it will include that explanation. And targets, you can also explain there about your targets, that maybe you have 50% reduction target to 2030. So then we include that in the certificate. So that's your commitment. These greenhouse gas verification statements are third-party opinion statements. They are used for providing evidence that you were verified for this figure, and also they provide confidence to investors and to stakeholders globally. So this is, again, for all type of industries. It's not just for airports, but if you get the verification, you automatically will get your GHG protocol greenhouse gas statement. Why? Because the Airport Carbon Accreditation is aligned to the GHG protocol. So audited by to the Airport Carbon Accreditation, for us, you are automatically also audited against GHG protocol. So that's why we issue the certificate. So GHG protocol is the basis for Airport Carbon Accreditation, and SGS is qualified to provide an additional verification statement with the GHG protocol as a criteria. So all the airports that we verified, the 70 plus airports that we did, to all of them, to each of them, we provided a verification statement. But majority to ISO 14064 Part 1, which I will explain later, but in North America to the GHG protocol. So this is an example of a dummy certificate. I didn't put the exact names, but this is exactly what we issue. So the statement, who's the airport, who's the operator, the standard, what is the emission, so the total emissions of scope 1 and 2, for example, here, and then we provide more information about if it's an international airport, passengers, cargo, what are the emission sources, if there are reductions achieved, you know? So here we're going to explain more about the carbon footprint, and this you can give to any stakeholder. So these are public statements. So which is the level 2 for Airport Carbon Accreditation? Is the reduction. So again, you have the quantification of scope 1 and 2, but also you have to demonstrate that you reduce your carbon footprint. So you have a base year that is, for example, your first period. In ACA, in Airport Carbon Accreditation, is the average of the last 3 years. But let's say the start, no? You have the emissions at the start, and then you need to reduce against those. So these are the level 2 requirements, and you have to build something called the carbon management plan. So the carbon management plan explains all your reduction, the responsibilities. Also, you have to provide training to the staff about carbon reductions. And what are common challenges here? That maybe you didn't inform ACA that you want to progress to level 2. So once you want to progress to a new level, it's good that you first write an email to ACA, say, for this year, we're going to upgrade to level 2. So then when they set up your application also, they are aware, because Airport Carbon Accreditation, sometimes it gets very busy because they have to respond to lots of airports. So if we sort out those things prior to the application time, it's better, because on that way, they are already prepared and you have less questions to the end, okay? So if you are going to apply to level 2, it's good that you let know Airport Carbon Accreditation in advance, and also, especially if you are going to do it in a year that is not the year, it's not in the second year. So it's the next year, better first to contact Airport Carbon Accreditation. Another thing is that maybe companies didn't set a target or a reduction. There's one question at the Airport Carbon Accreditation portal that tells you if your reductions will be measured absolute, that means the total footprint of the airport, or relative, that means that depending on the number of passengers, for example. So at the level 1, really, it doesn't matter, because anyway, you don't have a reduction yet. But once you want to go to level 2, you have to review, what did I promise? Did I promise the reduction absolute or the reduction relative? Because if it was absolute, then you have to reduce your footprint from the total, or if it was relative, by passenger. So if you consider that your footprint, if you put, for example, absolute, but you think that your footprint behaves different, that it behaves more like passengers, maybe you talk to ACA to change it, or the other way around. Possibly better the other way around, because later I will explain that in level 4, it requests to have it absolute. So good if maybe you start considering to put it absolute rather than passenger, because sooner or later, when you arrive to level 4, it has to be absolute reduction. So think about migrating to absolute. And then, as I was telling you, prepare a carbon management plan, no? Tips for success: train and implement your level 1 policy, and also training the scope 1 and 2. Now also plan how you're going to make your reductions over the baseline, and get verification for these reductions, and get the verification for the carbon footprint and the reductions, and also discuss with ACA prior to move, not only for level 2, but for every level. Let know ACA what are your plans, because they have to set up again your application. So for the level 3 is, again,
And
you have
Ursula,
to do the same as, yes?
Really quick, a couple questions. Can the relative reduction include cargo or only passenger? Can the relative reduction also include account for cargo or only passenger? So I think they're wondering if passenger traffic affects that, but I believe that's going to, some of that falls to the airlines. But do you want to talk about cargo versus passengers?
Yes, I have had actually that situation in one airport of Brazil, that because of the COVID, they practically changed their way of operating. Before they were more by passenger, but now big part of their footprint was because of cargo. Because I thought, why it increased so much? And they told me the cargo, because of COVID, everybody was bringing things. So I think on this, you need to discuss with Airport Carbon Accreditation, because again, at level 1, you maybe put it already by passengers, but now you see that your airport is more moving because of cargo, but if it was temporal only because of the COVID, then maybe you say this is a limited deviation. Limited deviation is when there's something just this time different than usual. You have to see how is your future going to be. So then you better select how you see yourself, your airport, through the future, in order to tell ACA, yeah, I think I'm absolute, or I'm by cargo. But remember, level 4, it's on absolute. So I think sooner or later, you have to move to absolute. So talk with them, but also think about absolute, because the reductions to net zero are in absolute emissions. And what was the other question, Adam?
I think we need to keep going so that we get through all the levels, and then we'll see what we have for QA. But thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So for the level 3, similar to the level 1 and 2, because you calculate your footprint, you have the carbon reduction plan, but in the level 3, you also need to calculate your scope 3 emissions. So the scope 3 emissions are the ones of your suppliers, the ones of the tenants, anybody that is on the airport, plus also how the employees go to work, that's called commuting, or how the passengers go to the airport, no? That's land transport. You have to see also the airlines operations to see what are it's called LTO, the LTO cycle. So here you have to increase, but that's for quantification. So you need to quantify more emissions than you did in the previous level. So the change to level 2, from level 2 to level 3 is very significant, because the effort to do the carbon footprint for level 3 is much higher than the one of the level 1 and 2. But anyway, you have the ACERT calculator, and the ACERT calculator helps you with this. And you have to prepare a stakeholder engagement plan. So how you coordinate and train, how you assign responsibilities to the tenants, to the suppliers. So that helps you to make a better stakeholder engagement plan. And then a tip for success is build strong third-party relationships with them, and also include in this stakeholder engagement plan the carriers, the vendors, the suppliers. For example, when we do the audit, it's very nice because we also sample from the stakeholder engagement plan. We visit maybe the ones that are in charge of cargo, or the ones that are in charge of the handling of the luggage. So we try to sample the ones that are more significant depending on the emission source. No, even we audited also the airlines sometimes to understand how they track their movements. No, so it's very good to include in the stakeholder engagement plans all parties, and at the audit we also discuss with them, because at the moment they are the ones that collect the source, the emission sources and the data. So that's why we discuss with them. No, in a sampling basis, because there are a lot, so you cannot talk with everybody. And here, I wanted to comment that if you are in level 3 especially or more, then consider to have your greenhouse gas statement to ISO 14064 Part 1, because what happens is the new standard of 2018 includes also scope 3 emissions. So now for level 1 and 2, you will need to provide justification of why you are not quantifying. But if you are in level 3, you are already quantifying scope 3. So this is very recommended, and this is the international standard, more famous for greenhouse gases in the ISO. So if you have that, then you can, if from level 3 or more, we recommend that you ask for your certificate ISO. And this includes also the value chain. And it is with the same audit we also cover, but there's some additional cost because we have to issue the statement and there's some accreditation cost. No, but anyway, it's worth to have it. So what is the level 3 plus? The same as the level 3, but you have to buy emission offsets, so carbon offsets also called, but only for scope 1 and 2, and also for business travel. You don't need to buy for all scope 3, just for business travel. And the challenge is to find approved offsets, because you cannot say, I'm investing in this forest project. No. You have to have an offset that is already approved, and there's a list of offsets, for example, the ones of the United Nations, of Verra, of Gold Standard are approved. If they're not approved, I'm sorry, but those are not approved offsets. So it has to be on the list of approved offsets of Airport Carbon Accreditation. So a good thing that I can tell you here, when you are going to buy offsets, you're going to invest money there. So it's good to buy offsets that are meaningful for your airport. For example, it could be because you protect certain location or because you are based somewhere. So try to buy offsets that are meaningful for your location, or maybe that you want to sponsor some type of project, maybe renewable energy project or waste, no, or methane projects. So if you are interested in that as airport, then you buy, or you can buy a combination of them. Also, it could be that maybe you want to buy offsets that are also having environmental and social benefits, so then maybe you buy Gold Standard. So you decide which offsets to buy, or you can buy a combination, and then you just put all together, and they need to sum, all the carbon offsets, they need to sum scope 1, 2, and business travel. Another tip could be to purchase renewable energy, because if you purchase renewable energy, then and you apply through market base, then your reductions will be less that you have to buy of offsets, because your carbon footprint is lower. So then several clients prefer to purchase renewable energy, so their market-based footprint is lower, and then they need to buy less carbon credits. So level 4. Level 4 is new since more or less 1-2 years ago that started the level 4 certification. So here it is transformation, and the target is to reduce 50% by 2030 and net zero by 2050, no, more or less. So you have to define what will be your scenario. If you are going to align to 2 degrees, because United Nations and the IPCC have, with the Paris Agreement, let's say 2 options, no? The scenario of 2 degrees and the scenario of 1.5. So the scenario of 2 degrees Celsius more than what it was at the 100 years ago. So that scenario is the minimum scenario, but the most challenging one will be if you select 1.5. But that is recommended to use the 1.5. So the Airport Carbon Accreditation, the United Nations say, please, if possible, select 1.5. But as a minimum, select the 2 degrees scenario. So why? Because with the 1.5, you have to reduce much more very soon. But with the 2 degrees scenario, is lower the reduction per expected per year, no? So you have to have evidence of your scope 3 reductions as well. So you need to build, now it's called a stakeholder partnership plan, no? So you will have a partnership because you also have to see that they reduce. And one other thing is that in the level 4, there's the inclusion of some emission sources that maybe were not quantified in previous years. So here, tips for success, see if you were quantifying everything needed. There's 3 or 4 more things, like for example, refrigerants that becomes compulsory, or also waste, no? It becomes compulsory for 4, but they're not extremely big, no? So, but now you have to put them. And to establish, another tip for success is to establish a long-term budget, because reducing emissions could be expensive. So if possible, see long-term as well. So your budget needs to be aligned to the scenario. So if you have targets to be carbon neutral in 2035, then we need to see that your financial long-term budget also covers that period, no? And level 4 plus is the same as level 4, but you need to offset the residual emissions of Scope 1, 2, and business travel. And again, find approved offsets. And so it is the same as I explained before, no? That select by location type, and remember, it has to be of the approved list of offsets. So here is a poll question. Does your airport publish an annual ESG or sustainability report beyond greenhouse gas data?
As an example, I think, yeah, I'll throw in that we have, you'll see this in a lot of other places where it's greenhouse gas reports themselves are common, but they're not as common in other industries as an annual end of the year ESG report, or an ESG or a sustainability report. And if you're publicly traded, sometimes you're actually integrating what's called an integrated report into your financials. But beyond ACA, which we mentioned is only greenhouse gas, do you, and some airports do, have a broader sustainability program that they report on? And greenhouse gas is just one section of a larger report. So it could be yes, not yet, but started the process, or no, or maybe just don't know. Give it about 10 more seconds. And I think that we certainly didn't mention the drivers for greenhouse gas, but some of those same drivers apply to broader ESG and sustainability issues. So the answers you gave earlier in the presentation may also be relevant. And I'll go ahead and show the results. So we got yes, and a significant portion also saying started the process, no, and I don't know. So a good split, but about 66, 67% are yes or starting. So one of the things that we talk about as far as like next steps is that just keeping you updated. We showed you it wasn't a very long ramp up to the ACA program itself. And now ACI has released this new guidance on ESG, environmental, social, and governance management. These are best practices. Again, similar to the benefits and the value of ACA, is that this is customized and it's specifically only about airports. And so some of the criticism of ESG is that it's too off the shelf, it's too generic, that some frameworks, you know, they shouldn't apply to every industry. But you've got a unique instance here where the leading, or one of the leading organizations in your industry is driving a very direct, customized approach to ESG and sustainability. And we provide, if you would like, and you're going to start to align with this type of guidance, two of the services that we provide are, one's called pre-assurance, which is basically a spot check, looking at and seeing if you're in accordance with these standards when you report. But if you actually want a full assurance, usually it's to a limited standpoint. It's basically a CPA approach to non-financial data. We can actually issue a statement of opinion that says that we did not find any evidence to suggest that your results were not true. It's a financial approach to data instead of a greenhouse gas verification, which is very kind of operational and ISO driven. But report assurance is also a great way to build confidence in your program. And the things that they list specifically are energy efficiency, water, electrification and decarbonization, greenhouse gas, materials, green purchasing, embodied carbon, but also social topics like diversity, human rights, living wage, indigenous and community partnerships, health and safety, and union and labor relations, as well as governance, which is really critical on just how are you managing the overall approach to ESG and greenhouse gas. So what's your board structure, any disclosures, code of conduct, risk management, accountability, core values, and cyber security. So if those things are also important to you, they're important and material to most airports, you can reach out to us as well about those kind of services. And definitely check out that document. You can download it from their website, ACI, Environmental, Social, and Governance Management. We also have greenhouse gas trainings. They're happening this week and they're happening next week. And so if you look at SGS Academy on our website, Ursula is one of our lead instructors and has been for a long time. And we're putting dates up for all of next year. We offer these at least quarterly. If you want to just build your competency around climate action, climate science, but also quantification, verification, and validation, we've got great courses all the way up to being a lead verifier yourself. And so just definitely let us know. And then I'll hand it over to Kim. And
Thanks,
any
Adam.
questions
It
you have.
It looks like we've got a couple minutes left for a few questions. First question, if we only do ACA, are we missing anything like upcoming regulations, or are there any risks that we should be aware of?
Thank you. Well, it depends where are you located at the end of the day, because a lot of the regulations are very territorial. So if I tell you examples, several of the clients that we have airports in Latin America, when we issue the certificate that I show you, GAG protocol or of ISO, we also issue to the national program. That is the case that we issue for Ecuador, for Peru, because we are also approved for the national program. So in a lot of countries, we can do that, or by state, but it depends if there's a local program for that.
Thank you, Ursula. Looks like we've got time for one more question. Can SGS help us with ACA accreditation now, or when should we think about starting this process?
Yes, of course we can help straight away. What happens is, first, you have to be ACI member. So that's a requirement of the Airport Carbon Accreditation. It's only for ACI members. So if your airport is already ACI member, then we can progress to see, maybe it could be a gap assessment, or maybe you want to join the training, or if you already have a calculation, or you have the asset calculator or a consultant, we can proceed with the verification. So depends what's your level of progress there. And also I wanted to mention something of the ESG. In the ESG, if you realize several of the parameters are already covered in your carbon footprint. So we do integrated audit. We have not only for airports, but for a lot of industry. At the same time that we audited the greenhouse gas, we audit the sustainability report. So it is less time and effort and cost, because we do 2 audits integrated. So that's something also important in the ESG, that you already progress a lot through the Airport Carbon Accreditation.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Ursula. Well, it looks like that's all we have time for today, but please don't hesitate to reach out to Adam, Ursula, or me directly if we can be any help. Our email addresses are all listed here. And again, we will send out the slide deck and an on-demand version of the presentation afterwards. So big thank you to Adam and Ursula for all of this wonderful information. And thank you to all of you for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you.